Welcome to the Wealth Secrets channel. Today we will look at a brief history of money, inflation and recession, and why you should care. If you want to try and avoid running into debt, this one is for you. Throughout this video, we will look at three different parts. The first one, what caused the 2008 recession. The second one is history repeating itself. And the third one, how can you protect yourself? If you want to watch this kind of video, don't hesitate to hit the like button now. Turn on the notification bell to be notified every time we upload one. Most importantly, if you don't want to miss any information related to wealth, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Before kicking off the part of what caused the 2008 recession, let's share why you must care about the history of money, inflation, and recession. If you are all set, then let's get started. Money, inflation, and recession are topics that will affect your life in the future. If you don't understand how and why these concepts are so important to your future, then you should pay special attention to this brief history of money, inflation, and recession. Our historical analysis will show you what happened and what it means today. Now, although we are living in the most advanced and technologically advanced era in history, many people are unaware of some essential facts about money, inflation, and recession. The average American knows little about the history of their currency or the Federal Reserve. The lack of knowledge about money, inflation, and recession can have serious consequences on your financial health. To kick off, here comes the first part. The first one, what caused the 2008 recession? The 2007 to 2008 housing bubble largely caused the recession. In 2008, a combination of factors created this bubble. Low interest rates, a shift to adjustable rate mortgages from fixed rate mortgage for those with less than stellar credit scores or small down payments, and banks loaning money to those who couldn't afford it. As the mortgage crisis spread from its roots in the housing market, it became one of the most severe economic recessions since World War II. The financial crisis peaked in 2008 when Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy on 15th of September. The following day, the stock markets crashed all over the world. American President George Bush signed the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008 into law, known as TARP, Troubled Assets Relief Program. This law allocated $700 billion to buy toxic assets such as mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt, obligations, and stocks. Meanwhile, unemployment increased in America and around the globe. Government spent unprecedented sums of money bailing out major corporations such as General Motors and AIG, while also implementing stimulus programs such as taxes or subsidies that encourage spending. These policies are widely credited with reducing unemployment and boosting GDP during 2009 to 2010. But they have also led some economists to worry about high inflation levels that may become problematic in the coming years. There is no way to predict what will happen next year. let alone next week or tomorrow. But we can see where our choices have brought us before, which is why understanding history might be helpful when making decisions in the future. The fact is, even if we don't know exactly what will happen to the economy in the future, we know what has happened in the previous recession. Will the current administration's tax policy and infrastructure investments keep America moving forward? What does this say about how other countries like China and India handle their economies? Now, here is the second part. Is history repeating itself? It's always worth understanding how things got to where they are today. We might have a better idea of what might happen in the future if we can see how things unfolded before. As you can see from our brief history, these problems are not new. It would be wise to take notice and understand how they affect us now. There are two types of recession. The first one, recession, and the second one is depression. And they are often confused with each other. A recession occurs when an economy experiences a slowdown and eventually grows again, whereas depression happens when an economy collapses completely and stays on the ground for years, which unfortunately is happening. Coming to 3 years of coronavirus. Besides, it is important to note that 3 factors are all interacted. The first one, the availability of goods and services. The second one, the amount of money in circulation. And the third one is the demand for goods and services. When one changes dramatically, it affects the others. So it's important to keep an eye on all of these 3. One big issue with inflating the money supply at such a high rate is that it could create hyperinflation, like in Germany during the 1920s. Hyperinflation can potentially wipe out savings, drive down wages, and make people unable to afford necessities like food and shelter. To avoid this from happening, governments should monitor the money supply closely by being mindful of changes in aggregate demand and level of production. More needs to be done by politicians before another Great Depression or hyperinflationary period starts occurring again. So, what do you think? Do you think a country is headed for another financial disaster? Have we already been experiencing one? Which form of disaster do you think is worse? A financial disaster or an economic recession? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And now, here is the final part. How can you protect yourself? There are many ways to protect yourself against the effects of inflation. The best way to protect yourself from inflation is to invest your money wisely and make sure that you are diversified with your investments. For example, not putting all your eggs into one basket. Although you might be tempted to put your money in a bank, you should keep in mind that banks need to pay for the funds they use. This is called fractional reserve banking. Banks don't keep all the deposits they receive. They loan out some of the funds and keep a fraction of them as reserves. The problem with this system is that if everyone withdraws their deposits at once. There wouldn't be enough money to meet all the demands on withdrawals, and there would be a bank run. Besides, knowing what affects inflation is important, as it can help you know what will happen in the future. Here are the top 5 best ways to measure inflation as an indicator. The first one, the Consumer Price Index, measures changes in the cost of a fixed basket of goods and services that a typical family might purchase over time. The second one, the Producer Price Index, measures changes in selling prices for goods before they reach consumers. The third one is the GDP deflator, measures changes in the total price level by accounting for consumer and producer price indices. Number 4, personal consumption expenditures measure how much people spend on food, clothing, housing, and energy. The final one, stock market returns, comparing stock returns to inflation rates. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, the United States economy experienced 8 recessions between 1950 and 2011. In response to these recessions, governments took steps to avoid prolonged periods of deflationary pressure by intervening in the market through fiscal policy, such as tax cuts and investment programs. The history of money, inflation, and recession is complex and difficult to understand, but knowing about them is important to prepare for future events. It's difficult to say whether or not inflation will continue increasing, especially in light of recent improvements in employment data. But if inflation does continue its upward trend, economists predict that we are going to start seeing more upward pressure on wages and commodity prices. The CPI and PPI will go up, which means the GDP deflator will also go up. Make sure you are aware of the future impact of inflation, including wage growth, commodity prices, and how it may affect your business or investments. If you don't know the basics of money, inflation, and recession, it won't be easy to deal with them. Knowing how to respond to a recession is one of the most important things we can do. The reason is that the government can't always help with the recession. Inflation has become more pronounced in recent years, but it will take time for us to see what effect it will have on our society. However, it would be best if you prepared for the consequences. In conclusion, understanding inflation is important because it has drastic effects on every person in society. Understanding money, inflation, and recession will allow you to plan for what could happen in the future. This knowledge also allows you to protect yourself against any risks associated with these topics. This marks the end of this video. If you want to know more about how to overcome inflation, then check out this video here to discover more. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.